I never thought it would come to this. Marcus Thorne, the man I had trusted, the man I believed was my partner, was smiling at me over breakfast like nothing was wrong. I'd always been naive, believing in people, thinking that a warm smile or a confident handshake meant loyalty. But I should have known better. I spotted it first in the numbers. A tiny discrepancy in the ledger, just enough to make me pause. My gut screamed that something was off. And when I traced it, the truth hit me like a punch to the chest. Millions missing, siphoned slowly over months. Each transfer a dagger from someone I had let close. I confronted him that night. I found him in the study, swirling a glass of wine like it was a trophy. "Marcus, what is this?" I demanded, voice steady even though my hands shook. He laughed, a low, practiced chuckle that sent a shiver down my spine. Ivy, you worry too much. Everything is fine. You've had a long week, go rest." I knew then that words wouldn't reach him. He wasn't just deceitful, he was dangerous. And my trust had blinded me. Later, as I reached for my laptop to gather evidence, I felt it. A sudden dizziness, a fog rolling over my mind. The last thing I remember before the world tilted was the faint chemical smell, the metallic tinge of betrayal on my tongue. I woke to the sound of alarms. Gasping, I realized I was in the garage, the car's exhaust filling the air. Panic surged through me, and then clarity hit. Marcus had tried to end me. Carbon monoxide, an apparent suicide attempt to erase my existence, and to collect on my naivety. I coughed violently, stumbling out just as my vision blurred. The cold air outside was a cruel reminder. My old self, the trusting Ivy, was gone. She had died in that fog of gas and deceit. When Gage Miller arrived, my brother's best friend, the man who had always had eyes sharper than mine, I saw the shock in his face. "Ivy!" he shouted, grabbing my shoulders and pulling me to safety. Relief, yes, but also the realization that everything had changed. I could feel the anger boiling beneath my skin, a cold, precise fury forming in place of the fear and trust that had made me vulnerable. My heart steadied, my mind cleared. Marcus had thought he could manipulate me, steal from me, and remove me from the game. But he hadn't counted on Ivy Sterling surviving. "Gage," I whispered, voice low but firm. "He won't get away with this. Not a cent, not a step, not a second of my empire. I want every move he makes tracked. Every account monitored. He'll pay." Gage's hand closed around mine in agreement. A silent promise. "I'll make sure he doesn't see it coming," he said, eyes steady, unwavering. And in that moment, as I felt the night air burn my lungs and the betrayal settle into a sharpened clarity, I realized I was no longer the woman Marcus thought he could manipulate. I was a digital ghost now. Silent, invisible, but everywhere he moved. And he would regret every choice he had ever made. The night after I survived Marcus's attempt, I barely slept. My mind raced, not with fear but with calculation. Every heartbeat felt like a drum of warning, my senses sharper than they had ever been. I knew that if I wanted to take back what was mine, I had to become something he could never anticipate. Invisible, precise, and always one step ahead. Gage sat across from me in the home office, his laptop humming softly. He didn't speak at first, just watched me, waiting for me to speak. There was no pity in his gaze, only focus, determination, and an unwavering trust that I could rely on him completely. "I want everything," I said finally, my voice low, steady, unwavering. "Every account he touches, every transaction. I want to see it all, before he knows it's been seen." Gage nodded. "Consider it done. He won't even know I'm watching. We'll set up tracking, surveillance through his devices, digital breadcrumbs leading straight to him. And Ivy, we'll make sure he can't hide." I felt a surge of gratitude and something else. Something unspoken, something quiet, like a tether that pulled me to him without need for words. Trust. I could trust him fully without hesitation. And that trust was more powerful than any weapon. We worked through the night, tracing Marcus's digital footprints. Each file, each message, each transfer of funds was a thread we pulled, unraveling the web he thought he had spun perfectly. And as the data poured in, I could feel the thrill of control replacing the anger, a clarity of purpose that made every sense in my body hum. "He's with Scarlett tonight," Gage said quietly, tapping into a live feed from one of the casinos. "Toasting with your money, celebrating his freedom." I clenched my fists, a sharp edge of cold fury cutting through me. "Let it happen," I said softly, almost to myself. "I want him to feel untouchable, to believe he's winning. Every step he takes will lead him straight to our trap." Gage's eyes met mine, and for a moment there was no need for words. His presence, calm and reliable, gave me confidence I hadn't realized I needed. Together, we were a force he could never anticipate. I could feel the bond forming, not yet flirtation, not yet desire, but a deep, unshakable trust that made the two of us stronger than any plan, any scheme, any enemy. As the night stretched into early morning, I allowed myself a moment to breathe, to imagine the look on Marcus's face when the truth finally reached him. And I realized something powerful. Surviving wasn't enough. I was reborn as something sharper, faster, and infinitely more dangerous than he could ever imagine. With Gage by my side, I was ready to haunt him, corner him, and reclaim everything he tried to steal. I wasn't just alive. I was the ghost in his machine, and he had no idea how close I already was. I had learned quickly that revenge wasn't about rushing in with anger. It was about patience, precision, and invisibility. Marcus believed he had removed me from the game entirely, that the woman he thought he controlled was gone. He couldn't have been more wrong. Gage and I worked in tandem, our movements synchronized without a single word. He handled the technical backbone, tracking transactions, monitoring communications, encrypting every move we made. I, meanwhile, became the strategist, anticipating Marcus's next steps, predicting the casinos he would visit, the accounts he would touch, the lies he would tell himself to feel safe. "This is his favorite route," I said, pointing to a map overlay of his digital footprint. "If he goes through tonight, he'll pass right by the transfer servers. We can manipulate the timing, make him think he's in control." Gage's fingers paused over the keyboard. "You want me to set it up so the funds look like they're going through, but actually they're being rerouted?" I nodded, eyes fixed on the data streams. "Exactly. He needs to feel invincible. He needs to toast with Scarlett, laugh at his success. And then, he'll have nowhere to hide." As he executed the plan, I felt the familiar surge of control. The thrill wasn't just in catching him. It was in orchestrating the trap, making every move deliberate, every consequence inevitable. And through it all, Gage remained a silent anchor, checking in with subtle glances, steady hands, and a calm voice that reassured me I wasn't alone in this. At one point, I leaned slightly toward him over the console, tracing a line on the map. Our hands brushed. Just a fleeting touch, but it felt grounding. No flirtation yet, no sparks, just trust. He gave a faint nod, his gaze steady and unwavering, silently acknowledging the bond forming between us. The night stretched on. Marcus, blissfully unaware, toasted with Scarlett, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, and bragged about his clever maneuver with my fortune. Every image, every signal, every keystroke I observed filled me with icy satisfaction. "Everything looks perfect," Gage murmured, voice low. "He won't see it until it's too late." I allowed myself a slow breath, feeling the calm before the storm settled over me. The woman he had tried to destroy had been reborn, not just alive but sharper, faster, and more lethal than he could ever anticipate. And with Gage at my side, every calculated step became easier, safer, more precise. We worked in quiet synchronization until the early hours, watching, planning, and waiting. Marcus was moving right into our hands, and the bond between Gage and me, built on mutual reliance and unwavering trust, had become unspoken yet undeniable. By the time dawn crept over the city skyline, I realized something important. Survival had been one thing. Revenge, executed with precision, was entirely different. And with Gage by my side, I was no longer just Ivy Sterling. I was the ghost that would haunt Marcus Thorne until every last lie he had told was exposed, and every last cent he thought he had stolen was returned to me. By the time the evening lights of the city glimmered against the glass towers, I had become something Marcus would never recognize: the silent predator, watching him through the very devices he believed were secure. He thought he had won. He thought my absence was total. Gage and I had set up a honeypot, a sophisticated trap that made Marcus believe he was receiving my final 50 million, the last of my empire he had siphoned. In reality, the funds were rerouted into a police-monitored account. Every keystroke, every confirmation he made was visible to us. Every heartbeat of his so carefully traced it felt almost intimate. "He's going to toast with Scarlett again tonight," Gage murmured from the adjacent monitor room. His voice calm, steady. "He has no idea this is all coming back to bite him." I allowed myself a thin, controlled smile. Let him think he's untouchable. The more confident he feels, the bigger the fall. For the first time since the attack, I felt the thrill of absolute control. Marcus had tried to erase me, and yet here I was, watching, calculating, orchestrating every move. And through it all, Gage remained beside me, quiet but present. I could feel his eyes on the screens, then occasionally on me, checking my reactions, grounding me. That trust, the knowledge that he would never falter, never leave a mistake uncorrected, was as essential as the strategy itself. Hours passed as we observed Marcus and Scarlett at the casino. Glasses clinked. Laughter rang out. Each smile Marcus threw was a dagger of arrogance, each boast a mark of his overconfidence. My stomach tightened, a mixture of anticipation and cold fury, but I never let it break my composure. Gage leaned closer, whispering, "Everything's ready on your mark. He won't know what hit him." I nodded, appreciating the quiet intimacy of his presence. No words, no touches, just a shared understanding, the unspoken bond of two people orchestrating something monumental together. That trust, solid, unwavering, was slowly threading its way through my heart, though I kept it tucked safely behind layers of calculation and focus. Finally, I initiated the transfer, letting Marcus believe the money was finally his. I watched his phone light up with confirmations, saw the gleam of triumph in his eyes as he leaned over to Scarlett, whispering conspiratorial words. Every movement he made reinforced the story I had crafted for him. Every step brought him closer to the edge of the trap we had set. "Soon," I murmured to Gage, "he'll see the truth." He offered me a small, confident nod. "And you'll be ready. Every move, every reaction, we've got it covered." For the first time since my near-death experience, I allowed myself to feel the satisfaction of being in complete control. Marcus Thorne had underestimated me, and in the quiet darkness, with Gage at my side, I realized that not only was my empire secure, but my trust in the one person who had never wavered was forming something stronger. Something that might last long after the final reckoning. Tonight Marcus would believe he had won. But the illusion of victory is always fragile, and in this game I was already 2 steps ahead. I watched Marcus through the live feed, savoring every moment of his overconfidence. He didn't suspect a thing yet. The way he raised his glass to Scarlett, the way he laughed, flaunting the wealth he thought he had stolen, made my stomach tighten with cold fury. But I didn't rush. Patience was part of the plan. Gage leaned back in his chair, eyes glued to the screen. He's starting to double-check the transfer confirmations. Something's bothering him. I smirked under my calm exterior. Good. Let him feel the first whispers of doubt. That's when fear becomes a tool. Sure enough, a subtle change in Marcus's demeanor began to emerge. He glanced repeatedly at his phone, frowning at numbers he thought he understood. His confident posture faltered for a moment, then returned as he tried to convince himself nothing was wrong. But the seeds of panic had been planted. "Do you see that?" I asked, pointing at the screen. "He's already questioning it." Gage nodded. "Ivy, you're in control. Every time he hesitates, every doubt that creeps in, it's working." I leaned closer, feeling the silent strength of Gage beside me. There was no need for words, no need for flirtation yet. Just trust. The way he anticipated my thoughts, mirrored my strategies, and reinforced my plans was grounding. He had become my shadow, my unseen anchor, and I felt an unfamiliar sense of comfort knowing he had my back completely. Marcus started to call Scarlett repeatedly, whispering into the phone, pacing in a corner of the casino. His confidence was fraying. I watched him through every camera, every device, and felt a cold satisfaction. Every step he took, every reaction, was part of the story we had written for him. Ready for the next stage? Gage asked quietly, glancing at me. I nodded, my eyes sharp. Let him sweat. Let him scramble. But no mistakes yet. We wait for the perfect moment when he's exposed completely. As the night deepened, Marcus's unease became more pronounced. He began scanning his accounts obsessively, attempting to track the transfers he thought he controlled. Panic flickered in his eyes. His smirk replaced by tension. I could practically hear the arrogance draining from him, replaced by a creeping realization that maybe, just maybe, he had underestimated me. Gage reached over, brushing a hand lightly against mine. Not a touch of romance yet, only a grounding, a reminder that we were a team. I felt the electricity of trust run through me, solid and steady, making me sharper, stronger. We're ready for the finale, he murmured. I nodded again, letting a faint smile tug at my lips. He won't see it coming. Not now, not ever. And in that quiet, calculated moment, I knew something profound. Survival had been one thing, but to orchestrate his downfall with precision, to watch him unravel in real time, that was power. And with Gage at my side, trust solidified into something I couldn't have achieved alone. Marcus may have believed he was untouchable, but tonight, the first cracks in his empire were undeniable. And the woman he tried to destroy was no longer just alive. She was a ghost, invisible, precise, and everywhere he moved. I watched Marcus pacing the suite, his polished shoes clicking against the marble floor. Each step echoed his growing unease, a rhythm I could practically feel through the cameras. The grin that once lit his face was gone, replaced by tension that made every flick of his fingers betray his panic. Gage leaned over my shoulder, his calm voice a steady anchor. He's starting to sweat. Look at him. He's checking the transfers for the 5th time in 10 minutes. I allowed myself a faint, controlled smile. Good. Let him unravel. Let the illusion crumble at his own feet. Through the live feeds, I could see Scarlett's false cheer, the way she clinked her glass with Marcus, unaware that she was part of our stage. He laughed nervously, trying to mask the dissonance, but it was hopeless. Every movement, every glance at his phone, betrayed the fear growing inside him. Gage tapped the keyboard, activating the next phase of our plan. The funds, which Marcus had believed were flowing directly into his accounts, were now fully redirected into the police-monitored honeypot. Each confirmation pinged silently on my console, invisible to Marcus. He had no idea the world he thought he had controlled had slipped through his fingers. Do you see it? Gage asked softly, eyes never leaving the screens. Every time he checks, the numbers look correct. But in reality, it's a perfect trap. I leaned in, my pulse steady, my mind sharp. I want him to feel invincible until the last possible second. He needs to believe he's winning. Marcus's panic grew more visible with each passing minute. He began double-checking every detail, whispering harshly into his phone at Scarlett, insisting she recount every confirmation. The tension was deliciously precise. He had assumed deception would be enough to remove me from his path, but his arrogance blinded him to the possibility that someone could anticipate his every move. Gage's hand brushed mine briefly as he adjusted a setting on the control panel. There was no flirtation yet, but the touch grounded me. His presence was unwavering, silent, and reassuring. I had come to rely on his calm, on his precision, and on the unspoken trust that had developed between us. Together we were unstoppable. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Marcus moving faster, more frantically, yet accomplishing nothing. Each tap on his phone, each phone call, each attempt to manipulate the transfers only dug him deeper into the trap we had laid. Soon, I whispered, almost to myself. The last step is all that remains. Gage nodded. Everything is ready. When we trigger the alert, he won't have a single chance to recover. I felt a shiver run through me, not of fear but of anticipation. This was the culmination of months of careful observation, planning, and execution. Marcus had underestimated me, underestimated what a woman reborn from betrayal could do when guided by strategy and precision. And with Gage beside me, silent and steadfast, I felt something else, a seed of connection deeper than trust, forming in the quiet moments between strategy and execution. It was subtle, delicate, and entirely unspoken, but it made me feel untouchable in a way Marcus never could. Marcus may have believed he was in control, but soon, very soon, the ghost he thought he had silenced would rise, and the empire he tried to steal would be untouchable once more. The morning light spilled across the city skyline, but Marcus Thorne never noticed. He was too busy staring at his phone, eyes wide, fingers trembling. The numbers he had once controlled so confidently now danced in a pattern he couldn't decipher. Panic had completely replaced arrogance, and I felt the satisfaction of a storm finally unleashed. Gage and I watched silently, side by side, screens flickering with every desperate attempt Marcus made to regain control. Each keystroke, each frantic phone call, confirmed that he was utterly trapped. He had no idea that every move he made had been anticipated, redirected, and monitored. "He's about to find out," I murmured, barely daring to breathe. "Any second now." Gage's hand brushed mine briefly as he adjusted a terminal setting. The touch was subtle, grounding, a reminder that I wasn't alone in this war. Trust had grown into something almost tangible between us, silent, strong, and completely mutual. On his screen, Marcus's face twisted with confusion. His smug grin had vanished, replaced by the stark realization that he was powerless. Scarlett's cheerful chatter in the background only made it worse. The illusion we had built so carefully was crumbling around him. "Police," Gage whispered, a slight smirk on his lips. "They're on their way." I felt a chill of satisfaction run through me. Months of betrayal, deceit, and near-death survival had led to this moment. Marcus had believed he could outsmart me, steal from me, even destroy me, but he hadn't counted on a reborn Ivy Sterling, working in perfect tandem with Gage. Suddenly, Marcus's frantic movements paused. He stared at his phone, reading alerts he couldn't understand, and then at the door, where uniformed officers had appeared. He opened his mouth, but no words came. His empire of lies, built on my trust and his arrogance, collapsed around him. Gage leaned closer, whispering, "It's over. He has no escape." I let out a slow breath, allowing myself a fraction of relief. Watching Marcus's downfall wasn't just satisfying, it was validation. Validation that I was no longer the trusting, naive woman he had tried to manipulate. I was reborn, sharp, precise, and unstoppable. As the officers led Marcus away, I felt Gage's presence beside me more acutely than ever. No words were needed. The bond of trust we had forged, through sleepless nights, careful planning, and mutual reliance, was undeniable. He had been my anchor, my shadow, and now the man who had helped me reclaim everything I had lost. I stepped outside, letting the morning sun wash over me. The city felt different. Brighter, sharper, more alive. I had survived betrayal, orchestrated revenge, and emerged not only victorious but stronger than ever. Gage's hand found mine again, firmer this time, and I didn't pull away. The trust we had built now had weight, presence, and the quiet promise of more. For the first time since Marcus's treachery, I allowed myself a small, real smile. This was more than survival. This was rebirth. And with Gage by my side, I knew I was ready for anything, ready to rebuild my empire and perhaps, ready to explore the bond that had grown from trust into something deeper, something worth holding on to. Marcus Thorne was finished. But Ivy Sterling, she had only just begun. The courtroom was quiet, almost too quiet, as Marcus Thorne was formally indicted for fraud, money laundering, and attempted theft of my assets. I sat beside Gage, his hand resting lightly on mine, a touch that had evolved from trust into something warmer, something comforting. No words were necessary. The silence between us spoke volumes. Watching Marcus finally face the consequences of his arrogance was surreal. For years, he had believed he could manipulate everyone, bend the world to his whims, and destroy me without repercussions. Yet here he was, exposed, powerless, and humiliated. The empire he had tried to steal was firmly in my hands, restored piece by piece, fully secure under systems that Marcus could no longer infiltrate. Gage leaned closer, his voice a quiet anchor amidst the tension of the courtroom. "You handled this perfectly. Every step, every move, it was flawless." I let out a slow breath, finally allowing myself to relax. "We handled this together," I replied, squeezing his hand gently. The trust we had forged over months had grown into something undeniably intimate. It wasn't just strategy anymore, it was connection. As the legal formalities concluded, I stepped out into the crisp air, feeling the weight of months of betrayal lift from my shoulders. Gage fell into step beside me, and this time I didn't hesitate to let him pull me close. His arms around me were steady, reassuring, and I leaned into him without a second thought. "You're safe now," he murmured, his lips brushing the top of my head. The warmth of his presence made something inside me relax, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel since Marcus's betrayal. "I am," I whispered, resting my head against his chest. "Thanks to you." We walked in silence, the city humming softly around us, until we reached the terrace overlooking the skyline. Gage tilted my chin gently up to meet his gaze. His eyes held admiration, respect, and something deeper, something I was finally ready to acknowledge. "Ivy," he said softly, "you've been through hell and you came out sharper, stronger, and unstoppable. But you don't have to face the world alone anymore." I swallowed, feeling my pulse quicken, not with fear but with anticipation. The months of planning, revenge, and rebuilding had brought us here, and now the bond between us was no longer just trust. It was something alive, something real. Without hesitation, I closed the distance between us, pressing my lips to his. The kiss was soft at first, a gentle acknowledgement of everything we had shared. Then, as if the months of tension and unspoken emotion demanded release, it deepened, grounding me, thrilling me, and reminding me that I was no longer just Ivy Sterling, the survivor. I was Ivy Sterling, alive, loved, and free. Gage pulled me closer, his hands firm but tender, and I allowed myself to melt into him, feeling every heartbeat, every warmth, every moment of connection that had been building quietly beneath the surface. This was more than victory. It was reclamation, rebirth, and the beginning of something enduring. Marcus was gone, my empire secure, and for the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future not just of power, but of trust, love, and the quiet strength of someone who had been broken, rebuilt, and finally whole. With Gage by my side, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living.